Thank you for joining me today for a Better Impact webinar on about our volunteer impact software. So the question of discussion is volunteer impact the right software for your volunteer organization? And we'll be looking through a presentation of our software, discussion of the features and benefits, reasons why organizations choose to use software like ours, um, demonstration, and time for your questions as well. My name is Cameron Seger. I'm your host today. I'm a software sales advisor at Better Impact, one of many. I have colleagues also working in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia. We have a global team here to support you in the use of our software. I come to you with a French degree and a Master of Business Administration, as well as training in business analysis, which have helped me to understand the types of challenges that organizations may be facing, help them to organize their thoughts and their needs as they go into the journey of software acquisition. And thankfully, also, I'm able to serve Francophone organizations in our great country of Canada. I've worked in grants administration and done a lot of work with nonprofits and implementing information systems, and that all comes in handy as well. So as we've mentioned, we're going to look at some of the common problems that volunteer service teams tend to face. We'll have an interactive assessment with a couple questions to ask you as well. We'll think about why the right software tools matter, talk about volunteer impact and Better Impact, which is the company behind the software, and then carry on into a demonstration and share some resources with you. So in our surveys of volunteer engagement professionals, we found that many are overwhelmed by too much data entry, maybe using disconnected tools to do your jobs. Many people are facing insufficient time to lead and engage with their volunteers. They're also seeking affordable tools that their leadership will approve of. And it's very important that they can trust the security of the confidential volunteer data, which is being stored in an information system. Our solution is Volunteer Impact as an all-in-one tool that helps you to manage your volunteers, their profiles, their schedules, their feedback, communicate with them, and run reports on all of that data. It is really very critical to us that the data be well protected. To prove that, we've gone through the rigorous certification process for the ISO 27017 and then 27001 standards. These are principally speaking to the information security management system. It's both the technology as well as the people processes in our company that are all applied to keep the software and the data we're interested with safe. I'm going to delve in now to an assessment. I'm going to set this up as a Zoom poll. So it's going to be an interactive portion for you. It'll pop up on screen in just a moment. So that should now have popped up. And our first question is, looking back to that slide a couple minutes ago, which problems resonated with you and your organization the most? Are you concerned about too much data entry? You're using disconnected tools, having insufficient time to lead and engage with your volunteers, seeking affordable tools, or trusting the security of your confidential volunteer data? You should be able to choose more than one option if applicable to you. Our second question is, how are you currently managing your volunteers? Are you using a tool like spreadsheets? Do you have a volunteer management system already in place? Or do you have some other solution that you like to use? In some cases, that may be paper. Maybe it's a database system like Access or custom build that somebody's made for you. You choose other, you have an opportunity to tell us what that is. And our next question is, in your opinion, what's most at risk if a change doesn't occur sooner than later? Could you be concerned about volunteer turnover or disengagement? or the same turnover and disengagement of your staff, about wasting money, damage perhaps to your organization's program or reputation, or do you have some other concerns that you might like to tell us about? Okay, so the majority of responses to problems that resonate, issues with using disconnected tools to do your jobs, as well as having too much data entry. And those are often related issues as well. If you're having to copy that data from one system to another, I feel like a headache. And the vast majority are using spreadsheets, which is not surprising. That's consistent with most conversations that I have with those who are considering their software. So you share the names of a few other volunteer management systems, pen and paper, some donor management, CRM systems as well, which may be doing the job for parts of your organization, but perhaps not serving you well as volunteer coordinators. And our next response, what's most at risk? Volunteer turnover and disengagement by a long shot. And of course, that's going to cost you even more time. And virtue of costing you time, also cost your organization money. That's the time of your wages that might have been dedicated to other tasks, maybe to keeping the existing volunteers a little bit happier, to engaging with them, to recognizing them, to helping them get mastery of their roles. Any of those factors can be really important. Now, these next couple slides are coming from G2.com's State of Software Happiness Report. It's a few years old now, pre-pandemic. Hopefully, they'll repeat this survey again soon. We may get different results. The world certainly has changed since then. But even, 4 or 5 years ago now, more than half of all employees reported that they would be unhappy at work because of the software that they're using. And about 1 in every 8 said that they had quit a job because of mismatched software, which essentially means they have the wrong tools for the job. So our goal is to help you to find the right software and to take you from less of those laws and frustrated feelings to a sense of joy and satisfaction in your job. Better Impact is about having better use of your time, better reporting tools, better communications, better stakeholder engagement, better data security and confidentiality, of course, likewise data integrity, better value, better visibility of your program and your organization, which may in turn lead to better recruitment, better accessibility to data by all stakeholders who need to be involved, and better volunteer and staff morale retention. So what is volunteer impact? At the surface level, it's a secure web-based volunteer management system with interfaces for administrators and volunteers alike. And it supports you throughout your volunteer lifecycle from the very beginning in recruitment and onboarding, the day-to-day scheduling, especially getting feedback from your volunteers, interacting with them and recognizing them, right through potentially to the end. You could capture an exit interview or survey on the volunteer's profile, keep that on record as well. So we do this with a public page for recruitment, online application forms, unlimited fields that you can customize to track what's important to you, e-learning modules, which are a training tool, a multiple choice quiz that allows you to update some of the volunteers' qualifications when they complete those modules. Profiles are searchable and easy to filter. You can set up communications lists. You can save your reports for ease of reuse using dynamic dates as well, which is a fantastic feature, allowing you to say, I'd like to run that search for last week and not always reset the dates from Sunday to Saturday. You can collect feedback as well, which can be collected at the very same time that you collect their hours. Communications via email, text, as well as posting volunteer news in the portal, and lots of reporting tools. We have a couple dozen pre-built reports and more that you can customize. I mentioned that there's an interface for volunteers and administrators alike. Administrators are going to come in through the web, and volunteers can choose either to use the MyImpact app for iPhone and Android, or to come in through myimpactpage.com through the web browser. Our Enterprise Edition adds some more features and segmentation typically for larger organizations who need to segment the access to their accounts into different teams or programs or locations or chapters of larger organizations. So each team would only have access to their own portion of the volunteers and the activities that are being run. Thanks for that feedback, Sander. Hopefully you can hear me better now. I'll mention as well that we have a couple other modules which can be added on. Client Impact specifically is an add-on for Volunteer Impact and allows you to also track client profiles. Volunteers can be connected with the clients who they work with and submit some encounter reports after they've met with that client. Donor Impact is our donor relations system, so it can allow you to track donors and their donations. They can give online, and you can also track donations from other sources. And you can issue CRA compliant tax receipts through the system as well. And Member Impact is our contact management system. It's a simplified version of our other modules, which shares the common features for registering users, for having profiles with customized fields, communicating with those people, as well as reporting on their profile data. So I told you about the software. We're going to hear now from a couple of our users who are sharing their testimonials and stories. They may say something that brings a question to mind. So again, I invite you to ask your questions in the chat, and we'll have a chance to respond to those towards the end of our session today.
My name is Cheryl Darlington. I live in Mississauga, Ontario, just outside of Toronto. And I started actually as a volunteer at the Compass in 2015 and sort of fell in love with the people and the community. Volunteer Impact was actually the only one that checked off everything on my list, and the price was good and the support was so great. So it was a really, really easy sell to my board of directors to get it approved in the end. The cost is reasonable. I like that the cost scales up depending on how many active volunteers you have. You don't pay for volunteers that have applied that you're not having active yet, and you don't pay for inactive volunteers. So it's really easy to manage that cost. The support, what I love is that there's a little chat in the bottom of every screen when you're on the admin panel. And if you have a question, you can literally type in your question. And usually within a few minutes, you're talking to a real person that really knows the software and getting advice on how to do things. So that's been really useful sometimes for my office volunteers who might be in and not necessarily understand everything to the same level. And it's a great way to get support. But even the documented support in the Better Impact TV, there's lots of videos to walk you through things as well. My volunteers love that it's so easy. In our old model, if they wanted to update their information, they had to come to the office and fill in an address change, and then somebody had to take that and apply that to the Excel spreadsheet. And sometimes it would be done in the wrong spreadsheet. There was all this communication back and forth. And with Volunteer Impact, the volunteers own their profile. They can change their address. They can update their telephone number. So it means that the information is always more up to date. The volunteers can self-schedule, and you can choose how to set it up, but I have it so my volunteers within 12 hours of the shift can take themselves off a shift if something comes up and they can't do it, which is great, because if they take themselves off automatically, then there's time for another volunteer to see the spot and sign up for it. And so it ends up being a really smooth process. Shift templates are wonderful too, because for us, we usually make our shifts available for a couple of months in advance. And with shift templates, you have that template set up. So when you go to add more months of the schedule, You can just choose your template and the dates, and it automatically fills in your shifts for that period. It's really easy to send emails to qualified volunteers. I can say, like, I'm going to send an email just to people who work in the kitchen. But if I want really active people, I can layer on another search and say, send it to volunteers that have worked at least one shift in the last 2 months. It's easy to communicate to the right people. Reporting, it honestly was 20 plus hours a month with our old system. And I can pull the same reports in less than a minute because there's preset reports that do exactly what I need to communicate. And because all the shifts and all the volunteers are all in the same system, all the data is already there and ready to analyze. So whatever you need to report on is very easy to do. E-learning modules is something we've just started making use of, but you can actually set up online training modules where volunteers can come in and do it. And at the end of their process, it will actually flip a qualification in their volunteer profile to indicate they've done that training. So I just love that I get full control over the kinds of information that we're tracking and what volunteers are doing. Like if we've got a new group that's working on fundraising, I can add an activity for fundraising and have those volunteers track their hours to fundraising just to get a better view of where time is being spent in the organization, which is really useful and good for our committees to be aware of too. So lots of good stuff.
I'm Denise Hawken, and I absolutely love working with volunteers. I currently work at the Ottawa Hospital as coordinator of volunteer resources and corporate onboarding. I've been with the hospital for about 14 years. Time really does fly by, and I truly believe that I do have the best job in the world. Why did we go with Volunteer Impact? Because there were a few other options out there for us. First of all, it's a Canadian company. And, we were having our IT department had questioned server security because the company that we had been using was based out of the United States. And the privacy laws here in Ontario are just so very strict that, it was better for us to be working with a Canadian company. It's definitely an affordable management system. It was something, it actually cost us less to move towards Better Impact than it was with our former system. And there were a lot of volunteer-centered features. So there was a lot. Cam had talked about allowing the volunteers to own their own experience. And that was something that we saw right off the bat. We had heard of some great features like self-scheduling and how volunteers can go in and update and change their own addresses, schedule time off for vacations. So these were things that were definitely selling points for us. What are some of the features that we loved the most? Obviously, self-scheduling. I'll talk about that in a couple of more minutes. My impact page gives the volunteers the opportunity to absolutely own their experience with us. Everything that they need is at their fingertips. If they need extra resources or easy ways to communicate with us, it's all there through that. For us, we took control of our assignments. So we're able to manage our schedules. We're able to manage our people. And we have a far better grasp on what it is that we're doing in terms of engaging and managing our volunteers. It was the best decision that we could have ever made. Back in 2013, we did not have a centralized approach to our programming. So our community members would have to drop off a paper application form, multiple locations if they wanted to just get in anywhere. So sometimes we were seeing triple the work in our department. We have 3 main campuses. So our applicants could drop off application forms at the Civic, the General, and the Riverside. And sometimes we were all calling the same people to book in for interviews. So that was not a very good use of our time. It was also not a good way to present to our community. We looked entirely disorganized. Our processes looked fluffy and they were extremely inconsistent. And from there, we've been able to set some very solid processes. For example, when we're looking at who has been the most recent person to apply, or, who was the person who we should be reaching out to next based on order of when they applied, Better Impact will tell us that. We just have to do a simple search based on date joined, and we'll know that, you know what, we're going to need to reach out to this candidate because they applied 2 weeks before this other one did. So it helps us be a little bit more fair and transparent in our own recruitment programs as well. We've been able to design new volunteer programs. We have actually enabled and engaged volunteers to help us in so many different ways in our volunteer program. And a lot of them are better impact super users as well. It's something that we never thought we would be able to engage volunteers in that way before. Our volunteers have control over their schedules and all of their onboarding deliverables. So no longer do they have to wait in a line at one of our offices that could be 10 people deep to tell us that they've decided when they're going to be taking vacation. They can go right into my impact page, sign in, and book those days off. I know that that might seem a little bit daunting to you about that, but it was something that we were forced to do in 2020. And we have had nothing but success with the self-scheduling modules, and any of the other onboarding deliverables too. They can do all of their onboarding. We've put that in their hands as opposed to on our schedules. Like I said, we have less duplication and less overtime. We have a better work-life balance because we are no longer doing 3 times the work that we used to do. And we're actually spending more time with our volunteers and our stakeholders, and particularly with our volunteers, actually doing engaging work and more of those coaching in the moment times. We're more available for that. We're seeing that our applicants are familiar with Better Impact. Many organizations use it, and we're seeing that volunteers are already comfortable with it by the time that they come to us. We love the email template section. You know, there's an area for us to, in the communications field, to set up multiple emails that we're sending out constantly, that all we have to do is just go and click it and it's going to send it to the specific person. That saves so much time. Better Impact actually helped us with volunteer retention, believe it or not. So volunteers who've moved away or who go to school are able to stay connected with us and still volunteer virtually. No other format we found has done this for us. I have 2 examples that I wanted to share with you. We have someone who started with us as a high school student who's actually a nurse now, but is out saving lives in British Columbia, but is still very involved with our volunteer onboarding team. So she's still supporting new applicants as they come on board with the hospital, even though her location is in British Columbia. She's still able to stay involved. And we have another student who has moved away to Toronto to go to university. And she is somebody who is on our courtesy calls team, another virtual role. She calls and reminds patients of their appointments. And because we have this great volunteer management system, she's able to stay involved and engaged in that as well. So we weren't expecting, you know, back in 2013, that Better Impact was going to help us with volunteer retention, but it absolutely has. I had mentioned, you know, that volunteers don't need to stand in line to wait to talk to us anymore because there are so many tasks that they can do for themselves. They have better control over their time. And the way that we like to think about it is like online banking. You know, they only have to come into the bank or into the volunteer office to actually speak to us about database issues when they really need to, you know, so they can upload their schedules, they can change their own email address, they can change their emergency contact information. That's not something that they actually have to come into the office or call us to do.
So from here, we're going to move into a demonstration of the software where we're going to see both the administrator and the volunteer interfaces of the software. We're now logged in to an account as an administrator. This is our demonstration account, the Example City Museum, but it could be for any type of organization, really. On this homepage, you have a summary of how many volunteers you have in their different statuses as they've worked through your onboarding into becoming an accepted, aka active volunteer. This is also a page where you can access your menu. You have menu items across the top for the different functions that will be important to administrators. You can save your favorite pages and functions that you return to most frequently. And you can also save searches and reports, which are easily repeated because you've saved your search criteria. Or in some cases, you may just want to see how many people would be found in that search. And that could be a helpful tool for some of your monthly, quarterly, annual reporting. These searches include report data. They also include communications lists for email or for text messaging. So it's quite powerful here. You can access a lot of functionality from your home page. In the top, we can also search for our volunteers. Say we want to find Victoria, we just need to type a few letters and we can find her profile with a summary of which modules she belongs to and her statuses. And we'll check that out. The search bar at the top also allows us to find pages in our system and to search through the help articles, which is a database of support and largely step-by-step instructions that could be useful to you as you get to know and master the software. Victoria's profile includes a summary of some of her key contact information, contributions that she's given, both in time and perhaps also in money if the organization uses the donor impact module. We can see when she has given, as well as which activities she's prioritized. We can also see the badges, which are visible to her as well as to us. These are graphical representations of her achievements, such as her years of service, qualifications that she's earned, and maybe also feedback that she's submitted to us over time. As we flip through the tabs, we can find her contact information, custom fields, which you've created for your organization's tracking throughout. And some of these fields may be visible to the volunteer on their application form. Others would be held and kept private just for your own use, your office use only. These allow you to collect responses in text, in numbers, in dates, file uploads as well, which means that you could upload a copy maybe of an old PDF application form, proof of a background check, or certification, or driver's license, whatever you need for your own auditing and record keeping could be uploaded here. We can also track checkboxes and drop down field responses. And there's no limit to how many of these fields you choose to create. Qualifications are another piece of the tracking here, and they're always going to be represented in drop-down fields, perhaps also with expiry dates, which means that you as an administrator can be reminded when those expiries are coming up soon. You can follow up with your volunteers and make sure that they do complete them. Qualifications could have an exact match, or you could also have a ranked qualification. For example, how much can you lift? If you needed to find somebody who can lift, say, 20 pounds, the system's going to return you everybody who can lift 20 pounds or more because they all meet that minimum threshold that you have. Likewise, something like a proficiency level, if you need a beginner, it's going to also find you the intermediates and the advanced. General interests are a way that the volunteers can tell you what type of work they may be interested in. You can also use general interests as kind of a help wanted ad on the public page, which will show you soon. We have a weekly general availability grid, which you can use when scheduling volunteers to find people who would typically be available. A bunch of miscellaneous tracking, including the managing of the volunteer status, and perhaps designating if they're a representative of a group, like a family, or school, or corporate group. Sometimes they all come in together. And if they are the group leader, then when they sign up for an activity that allows groups, then they can tell you how many people are coming along with them. We had a question there about the general availability. No, you can't specify the times. There is a header you can add on your application form that might tell them what those times mean to you, but the grid is standardized. Communications tools, we've mentioned email and text messaging. All of those messages that you send through our software will also be tracked on the book on here, the email history tab. So you can refer back to the date and the message that was sent. And you can search for these as well. If ever you want to run a search and send a message to everybody to whom you have not previously sent that message, you can pull that off as well. So the emails can be sent individually or in bulk. Ditto the text messaging. SMS text messaging is a one-way feature, though. We use a web service. You would not receive any responses to those. And so it's really good for notifications and for alerts, but not for a conversation. We also have a notes log here where you can add permanent entries on the volunteer's profile, something like the results of a conversation that you had, a disciplinary note, maybe their upcoming vacation. You can add all of these. Once they're saved, they will remain in place forever, accessible only to administrators. This might be the place to track interactions that you're asking about, Heidi. Now, from the volunteer's profile, we can assign them to activities. They'll show you a better place, I believe, for most of your scheduling and assignments. We can see their upcoming schedule for this person, and we'll also be able to run reports from the broader schedule across all the volunteers. They can see the hours that they've tracked, and you can make entries for them as well. So you could go and create a new time log entry, choose the activity they were participating in, how many hours they gave, and we could fill in feedback fields for that as well. Feedback fields are questions that you'll have customized for each different activity, which questions you want to ask, whether or not they're mandatory, requiring a response. And these could be ways that you could collect satisfaction, incidents, stories, also KPIs. There could be some ways that volunteers can help to tell the story and the impact of your volunteer program, which could be very valuable when you're writing a grant application, when you're presenting to your directors, or any other time that you need to explain what your program is accomplishing. We can run reports on the individual volunteer and also add them to committees. A committee is another way to group volunteers together. It's a search term that we can use, and it's one tool that might allow volunteers to communicate amongst each other. If you set it up that way, volunteers could send a group message to everybody else, and it would be sent to their email, to their inbox. It's not due for our volunteer profiles. So a little example here of sending a message using the search and reporting tool. So if I wanted to send a thank you message, given, say, 25 hours so far this year, I could go and find maybe just my accepted volunteers, or maybe I'll include everybody. I'll add some search criteria. I can search among all the different types of fields that we have in our system. In this case, I'm looking for the number of hours logged. It's greater than or equal to 25 on or after. Now I could go back and choose January 1st, or I could use a dynamic date and say the start of the current year. So this could be for any of our different activities. We'll add and go, and we'll find the 19 people given more than 25 hours, and we can send them a message. Maybe we'll choose from our email templates, and we've already got one that would suit this need. Here's one from a couple of weeks ago. So this is filled in, and we have a piece here that will fill in the person's first name for us. All of these emails would be triggered by you and your colleagues when you need to send them. Sending of the emails is not going to be automated. Yes, the search does include any of the custom fields, the qualifications, the hours, the schedules, and the signups, when they last logged into the system, email messages that you've sent to them. Just about any piece of data that's tracked in software can be used in your search criteria for your reports and for your communications and other big tips. No, Dylan, sorry, the start of the current year is going to be the calendar year, but you could choose a different date and work from there. With the dynamic dates, you could say something like start at 3 months after the start of the current year, and that would align with April 1st as the beginning of many organizations' fiscal years. Yep. Scheduling is such an important part of our software. For many, you're going to start in the calendar view, which is going to be a color-coded place to see how many of your shifts have been filled to the minimum number of volunteers and how many still require more volunteers to be assigned. We could start on, say, tomorrow, and we'll look at all of the shifts for Friday, May 10th. In here, everything's color-coded. If we have red, we have fewer than the minimum number of volunteers required. We're seeing blue. We're very happy. We've met the minimum. They've confirmed their shifts. Expand these. I can see who's been assigned into the tour guide role, and maybe I want to assign somebody new. Searching for volunteers who are qualified. Previously signed up for this activity because maybe I don't want to go through that initial orientation tomorrow. I don't have time for it. I'm looking at my accepted volunteers, and they don't have any overlapping assignments, so there's no schedule conflict for these people. And then we could go further. We could find somebody who's on a given committee, somebody who's typically available on Friday mornings. We could also search for a specific volunteer by name. We run that search. In this case, I didn't get any. If I loosen it up a little bit, I can find a few more people. And say we want to assign Henrik here. We could assign him right away, or we could choose to send him an email first, let him know we would like him, and wait for his response. Depending on the settings that you choose, when a volunteer is assigned, so expect them to click another button to say that they confirm that they're going to be there for that shift. Some organizations think that's too onerous, and instead they automatically confirm everybody who's been assigned. You can also automatically confirm them and assign them the very moment that they request that shift, or you can leave it to your administrative team to review all of those requests and then choose who will be assigned. That's very popular in theaters, for example, where you've got some roles that are very desirable. Like if you can actually see the show that's running, everybody wants that shift. And they may be less interested in working concessions, for example. So you pick and choose which activities have the automatic assignment, which ones they need to review, maybe taking a lottery or an equity-based lens into selecting those volunteers. If we add somebody to, say, our office assistant role here, the very moment that we assign them, the color coding is also going to change. So we have our minimum of 1. We now see blue, so we're happy, and we can carry on to the next. In most organizations using volunteer impact, volunteers themselves are going to be looking at the schedule and picking their shifts. And that's going to take a lot of this burden off of your shoulders, and you'll just be looking to fill in the gaps. I mentioned there's a couple dozen different types of reports. The big themes are hours, volunteer feedback, and schedules. If you have donor impact, then you can also report on donations. If you have client impact, then you can report on the client profiles and on the client encounter reports. And in all cases, you can also report on the profile information of your volunteers or your administrators or your other stakeholders, and on the notes log entries. This can be very, very fast. For example, you want to know how many hours each volunteer has given so far this year. Then we'll get our hours by volunteer report. We'll pick our date range, year to date. We can view that report. It's automatically sorted from who's given the most hours down to the least. We could also have added a threshold here, so only those people who've given more than a certain number of hours would be included. I think there's probably some questions about reports. So, John, we've got a few of these preloaded reports, and anytime you see this term of a raw data report, that's going to be one where you can do more customization as to who would be included in the search and which fields you want to have as your report output. That's going to create a table for your report, which you could view in the browser, or you could take it to your spreadsheet software and do some further analysis, charting, graphing, pivot tables, VLOOKUPs, you name it. Show you a quick example here. If I want to find volunteers who, let's look at a qualification, who have not completed their background check. It will need everybody pass their background check. So in this case, I've got 10 people whose Excel proficiency is less than or equal to intermediate. Maybe I want to offer them a training session. So I'll get their names, I'll get maybe their address, share it with the trainer, their email address. We can get some more information about them as well. We can get the last time they logged into the system, these profiles table, which we can also export. I'll take you over now to the volunteer's experience of this portal. We're starting here on the public page, which is really, it's a recruitment tool. It could be where they land after they've clicked on the volunteer program from your website. And this is a page that you can control. So if you're in a highly bureaucratic organization where you don't have much control over the pages of the website, but you'd like to be more nimble and to control what people can read about your program, this could be a really helpful tool. You can, of course, introduce it. You could tell them about the types of opportunities that a volunteer could hope to sign up for. Maybe even show them real shifts that are coming up and need to be filled. That can be a beautiful thing if a person is considering applying, but they'd actually like to know, when is that shift occurring? Are they available? They could get that answer before they even respond with any of their information. Should you choose, you've got to make that activity public before they can see it. And the goal here is to drive them towards filling in an application form. The application form is going to collect their personal information, contact info, as well as the other custom fields, qualifications, interests, and availability that you choose to request of your applicants. And then you can fill in more data as you get to know them, as you begin to onboard them, have your interview, get your background check, contact their references, etc., etc. After they've applied and it's time to log into the system, they could visit the generic version of My Impact page. This is coming up in French because of browser settings. Or they could visit a branded version that would have your color scheme and your banner. Log in the username and password. So we're now in as Veronica. On her homepage, she sees a summary of her hours given and her upcoming shifts. She can see her badges that she's earned. Again, one of the badges here could be based on the feedback that she submitted, numerical feedback, at the same time that she's logging her hours. You could also have the thresholds for the number of hours she's reached, thresholds for her anniversary milestones, and for other qualifications that she's earned. You'll be customizing these according to what you want to recognize in their performance. If you want to share your social media, you could include tweets from X or your Facebook feed, as well as an image gallery, which is powered by Flickr. You could share personal messages with your volunteers, as well as broadcast your volunteer news. When it comes time to sign up for an opportunity, they can go through a calendar or a list view. And here they could filter what they're looking at. Say I want to just work in a gift shop today. We'll filter for those opportunities. I don't see any coming up, so let's choose something different. How about guest services? And now I can pick month, say next week. Next Wednesday, I want to do an info booth attendant. I can read the description about that activity, make sure it's for me, and maybe also see who else has signed up for it. If you turn on that opportunity and your volunteers choose to share about themselves, they could be sharing their name, their picture, or they could keep themselves private and anonymous through this feature. You could also turn it off entirely if it's not from your group. We'll sign up for the opportunity, and it's now going to appear on their schedule. Perhaps you allow volunteers to remove themselves from the schedule after they've been assigned, and you can set a minimum threshold. Say you require 24 hours notice before you cancel your shift in the software. So that's easy to do. As an administrator, you could receive an email notification when somebody cancels their shift. Volunteers don't just have to check the portal to see what their schedule is. They also could opt in for weekly schedule reminders. We send them those out on the weekend with the next 2 weeks shifts. They also could integrate this with an online calendar, like sync it automatically with their Google Calendar. And then they can really see how that relates to the rest of their life. Having 19 separate shifts each day, I would categorize those. We allow you to have activity categories. And so then the volunteer can filter to see just the category of interest to them at a given time. And you might further limit what each volunteer can see based on the qualifications that they've earned. So maybe you need a driver or a chauffeur. We only show that shift to people who have a valid driver's license and current insurance, and maybe have also gone through the required training or background checks. Volunteers can log their hours through this interface. This is one of 4 interfaces for logging hours. We also saw how administrators can log their time. We can use a time clock as well, which allows volunteers to sign in and sign out. And finally, we could automatically log their time. Say the duration of the shifts is really regular and people tend to show up as scheduled, and then the system could commit those durations to the system. And then maybe it's just up to you to manage the exceptions in case somebody didn't show up or they stayed longer than planned. That might be less onerous than having every person log every shift every time that they come in. Here it's from one program to the other. They can contact you as well. You'll have designated which administrators are your contact people to whom the volunteer can send an email. And another great feature here is the e-learning modules. This is a good tool for training and orientation, sometimes also for waivers and declarations, where they can review the content that you want to provide and then respond to one or more multiple choice questions. When they get the passing grade, they'll earn the qualification for that e-learning module. If they don't have the passing grade, they can try again. They can keep trying until they get it right. And that might also assign an expiry date. It'll expire in 12 months, for example, and then they should recertify. Then we'll look to a few of your questions here and see what may be applicable to the volunteer interface. Can contact number, email be tailored? It would be the same for all volunteers in your organization. But on this contact page, you can add a title or some other explanation as to what each contact person is for. So we've got Janet Doe, who's the volunteer manager, but somebody else might have a different type that helps to differentiate where you're communicating. And if they belong to a committee, the committees also can be listed on this page to send that email to the appropriate person. Volunteers that get assigned to the same shift every 2 weeks, or in other organizations might be the same shift every week. That could be done from the volunteer or the administrator interface. On the volunteer side, I'm going to go to the list view. And I'm going to find, let's do this tour guide activity as an example. If I want to sign up every Monday morning, I'm going to start by filtering the calendar to Mondays with the morning starts, filter these down. Now, these initial shifts are already all scheduled. We all have 3 of 3, so I'm not finding any matches that I can sign up for. So maybe I just need to choose a different activity. But from this view, I'll be able to check the boxes for all the shifts that I want and sign up for those. Let's try that again. Monday mornings. Maybe a different day. Lucky me, these shifts are already full. How's the process to load the training features? So those e-learning modules that we've seen, it could be as simple as copy and paste your training materials, information from your manuals and handbooks into that field. You can also add pictures. You could also embed documents. So PDF, Word, PowerPoint, those could be uploaded into our system and viewable there, or they could be hosted somewhere publicly like Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive and embedded in place. You could also embed videos from a source like YouTube or Vimeo. If you've got some training materials, they do have to be public on those pages, but you can then insert them directly into the volunteer portal so that they don't have to browse away. If we don't want volunteers to sign up, if we want to schedule with the program, schedule based on the volunteer availability, um, that would tend to be an instruction to your volunteers. Maybe you tell them that you're in charge of all the volunteer assignments. You'd also set up every activity so that you would have to approve any requests, and then you might just ignore those requests because you're handling it yourself. But be clear to your volunteers how you're using the system. Maybe they're only meant to log in for training and to check their schedule, and you're always going to be in charge of the actual schedule. There were questions about storage limitations. We do not host videos. That's why I mentioned a source like YouTube or Vimeo. You can have quite a lot of different documents that you've uploaded into our software, but not video files. Thank you, John. Yeah, you could also hide activities if the volunteers are not qualified, but that might be a hindrance to yourself when looking for volunteers to assign. So you've got to balance the use of that feature. I'm scrolling through your questions right now. Upload activities and times for volunteers to sign up for. You're going to have to create each activity individually, and then you can create shift templates for yourself, like a weekly or a monthly schedule, and then you're set a recurrence for that shift. I want to apply that weekly schedule for the rest of the quarter, for the rest of the year. And then when that time elapses, I'll repeat that task and add some more shifts for the next block of time. Once those shifts have been created, then they're available for scheduling to begin. In terms of keeping historical records, you can keep these volunteer profiles in the system right now indefinitely, though we will have to start exploration for data as data privacy rights and the right to be forgotten continues to be developed in legislation around the world. There was a question about automatic reminders sent to volunteers. So that would be using the weekly schedule reminders feature, which the volunteer can opt into from their contact information page. And this is the same place they'll decide whether to share their profile when they sign up for activities with other volunteers. Sign up for weekly schedule reminders here. Get the link to load Better Impact into their online calendar, or also opt in to receive text messages from your team. Is there a notification to administrators when a volunteer cancels one of their shifts? Yes, though for each administrator, they will have to choose whether they want to receive that notification. There are notifications you can receive when volunteers apply, when they change their status, when they sign up for an activity, when they cancel an activity, when they complete an e-learning module, and a few other scenarios. So Trish was asking about continuing the communication from an email. That will continue outside of volunteer impact, between your inboxes, your Outlook, your Gmail, your Yahoo, your Hotmail, whatever you're using. And perhaps you would want to record the results of that conversation into the permanent notes log once you've come to a resolution. Is there a field for volunteers to submit reports? I'd say that would be the feedback fields. So you can type in text, you can type in numbers, you can choose from drop-down fields. That feature does not allow for the uploading of documents, however. Xander has a big question. How do you set all this stuff up? So we provide training videos for planning and configuration, for communications, for reports, for creating schedules, for assigning your volunteers, for onboarding them as well. Those videos are free and include it for all users, as well as the support pages, as well as chatting with our support team. So we have a chat button in the bottom right corner of your administrator interface, and the team is typically responsive within 5 minutes or less, 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. So those are great resources to help you get to know the system. And if you also want to have training time, you can purchase training as well. We do offer a service for importing the data about your volunteers or your other stakeholders into the system that will create their profiles with usernames and passwords. And we have another service where we could help you to build the application forms and the onboarding fields to help get you ready for the onboarding of your volunteers. Marla, I think your question is answered now through our conversation with e-learning modules. So yeah, the orientations and trainings and resources can be managed through e-learning modules, as well as the document library. Frank asked about there being a basic and simple version. It's the same version. It starts off as essentially a blank slate with just the contact information fields. And then as you develop it, you'll add your custom fields and qualifications and your activities and start to schedule volunteers and build it up to the extent that the program needs it. So yes, we talked about customizing volunteer achievements. Thanks for that question, Rebecca. So we've got the 4 different types of badges, qualifications being the most powerful one. You can create qualifications for anything that you might want to toggle on and off for a badge. The system does not integrate with Workday or other software, but we do offer an API, which would allow you to get profile information from Better Impact and share it with another system, assuming you've got somebody there on your team who can need a developer to help you with that task. Yeah, extensive resources and documentation on what's required there. Rebecca also asked about pricing. We won't be discussing pricing today, but on each of our regional websites, betterimpact.ca, .com, .co.uk, .au.com, and the others, find a pricing page and links to our online pricing calculators. You can also schedule a chat with myself or your local software sales advisor, and we can help you through the pricing. Can the colors be changed from yellow and green? On the administrator interface, the colors will always be the same. You'll have the Better Impact colors. On the volunteer interface, where we're seeing orange right now, you'll get to customize those for your organization's needs.